step one, dealing with adrenaline, dealing with fear, is always to relax the body. It has to be. Otherwise, you're just throwing rocks at a tornado. Slow down. I find that when I run to the airplane really fast, and of course it's quite common for me. I've got multiple parachutes, and very often they're all unpacked, and they need me on that load, and I'm running to the airplane, putting my leg straps on. Oh, these goggles on! They throw me the goggles, and I jump onto the plane, and the rig isn't even on me yet. Now I've got even more work to do to get myself to slow down my heart rate, to cool out, so that my body can alter the climate of my thoughts. I have to reduce my activity level, reduce the needs of my body. And of course that kicks in parasympathetic systems. Totally different reality. Something that I learned about breathing. You're going to love this diagram. This is an actual photo of real lungs. You guys know about how the diaphragm works, right? It's a muscle. And when you inhale, it flexes and flattens. That's work. The inhaling, right? You sneak up behind somebody and you goose them. So it has been taught to me when I'm doing high altitude mountaineering, or I'm jumping out of the airplane at 23,000 feet with no oxygen on, or any kind of high stress situation, they always tell me, focus on the exhale. And I always wondered what that was all about. And I'm realizing that it makes sense that if the exhaling is a relaxation of my diaphragm, and if I can I like to think of it as putting a parachute on my exhale, and I when I'm really stressed out, and I just can't get my thoughts under control. If I focus on my breathing, focus on the exhale, slow down, now I push the reset button. Now I can create a new set of possibilities that are positive. That I could feel good about the situation, take all that thing, whatever it is that I was scared about, and go, let's do it. Let's attack this with positive energy. Solve the problem. Study, whatever it is. The other thing that I found very interesting is that the parietal lobe of the brain, responsible for orientation in space. In the absence of input, when it's not orienting me in space, trying to figure out what's going on, it actually kicks in parasympathetic systems. When I hold my eyes still for a period of time, that alone is called deafferentation. You sit still really for a long time and you focus just on one place, and then the light changes and everything looks kind of weird. It's that's deafferentation. And we can use that sort of bottom-up effect to change the way we feel. And if we change the way we feel, we can create completely different situations, different outcomes. So this is part of relaxing. Under parachute. One of the things that I always teach my students to do, because, of course, they're pretty freaked out. You just jumped out of an airplane. Now you open the parachute, and for a moment, you don't know what's going to happen. Is it going to open or not? It opened up. Now, of course, if you carry all that adrenaline all the way to the ground, your landing is going to stink. You're going to crash into the ground, more often than not. So I teach them to put the parachute into brakes and take a deep breath and relax their muscles and look at the horizon and sink into that harness and don't look around for a little while. Just enjoy being there. Appreciate it. I think that's a nice thing to have in our heads, when you really get to that point. And I know you're not scared right now. It's a little hard to get into that headspace. But if you can, for just a moment, imagine what it's like when you really get scared. And I know you all have amygdalas. To wake up to the fact that you're freaking out. Take a moment, create some space in your day, even if it's just 5 seconds, to stop, clear your head, and then go. I remember being on jump run. I was in a tailgate airplane at the X Games. And ESPN's there with their big-ass cameras. I mean, it's scary enough to jump out of the airplane. But here we are in competition where, this matters. We've been training really hard. We got sponsors behind us. There's money involved if we win or lose. And so here I am having to give an interview on the way to altitude on the last round when we were neck and neck for the lead. And of course, by the end of that interview, I was pretty frazzled. I really had a lot of uncomfortable feeling about my situation. And I was starting to have thoughts like, what if I blow the exit? What if wait, what are we supposed to do on this one? I can't remember. And instead of asking my teammate, what am I supposed to do on this one? I took a minute, I sat down, I relaxed, and I kind of meditated for a little while, and then I remembered everything. Because I got in touch with the feeling of succeeding. And it all came back from there. And we won. So focusing is another step in the process of cooling ourselves out. We get our bodies to relax, and now that opens the door, the possibility to focus our minds on whatever it is that we want. And it seems to me that ultimately what causes fear is negative thought patterns. Fixating on what doesn't make us feel good. And if we keep fixating on it, things will not change. We will not be able to change our affect, our mood. It's not going to happen. So then the question comes, how do we cultivate non-attachment to thinking? Can we actually train the brain, train an individual to have a different set of responses to the same situation? So, you guys familiar with the idea of neuroplasticity? The brain can change through experience. Everything you learn, every new concept, every new experience you have, it actually alters your brain. Literally. Physically. And so if we repeatedly do things that cool us down, we're going to become a cooler person. That's the assertion. And it is my experience, coming from somebody who was terrified of heights, not making this up. I jump out of airplanes for a living. Okay, the truth is that I talk for a living, but I talk about jumping out of airplanes most of the time. So, neuroplasticity in action. The idea is very, very simple. That if fixating on something that makes us feel like crap is the problem, we need to get good at letting go of thought in general, whatever the thought is, and focusing on what then? Do you substitute? Do you go to your happy place? Yeah, okay, maybe, but we don't always have a happy place to conjure. And it's a long jump, in my experience, from feeling like crap to feeling great. And in between there is not thinking. Part of my graduate school program was we took all the psych grad students up into the mountains and we meditated for an entire month. All we did was stare at carpet for a month. The most boring class I've ever taken. Okay, second most boring, but that's another story. And what I've discovered is that if I do that for a long period of time, my thought patterns change. My ability to let go of a thought that is, kind of pointed in the wrong direction becomes better. And if my problem is that I'm fixating on negative thinking, I can't. Boy, I hate that. I get a lot of students, they say, well, I can't land well. I got a problem. I'm just not a good lander. And I say, well, either you need to change your attitude or you need to quit skydiving. So if we can sit down from time to time on a bench, on the grass, or whatever, and periodically, every day, meditate, it turns out that we can actually change ourselves significantly. It's been a very empowering thing for me and a lot of my students. So the idea is very simple, right? You're trying to focus on the present moment, but then you have a thought, and that thought might be, I'm hungry. The thought might be, I'm horny. They come up. Whatever it is, the thoughts come up. Where you're human, the only way to stop thinking is to hit yourself on the head with a great big hammer. I'm sure you can think of several medications that would also accomplish the same goal. But when the thought comes up, instead of following it, like chasing a rabbit, you let it go. And you return to noticing your breath, noticing the sounds and smells, right now. And you return to now. And then you trip out again. And then you return again. And if we do this on a regular basis, there are changes to our brain, to our tendencies. And when the fear comes up, we have the ability to say, thank you for sharing. Thank you for giving me that very, very salient, clear picture of what the worst case scenario would be so that I can avoid it, and I'm going to let that go. Because if we focus on what we don't want, we get it. So the idea is to very simply notice our thoughts and label them thinking. That's at least the Tibetan way of doing it. Just label it and let it go, whatever it is. You let them go and you return to the present moment. Try it on. See if it works. I'm sure that many of you are already on this trip, and that's great. So the idea, for me anyway, is to not think of the absence of thought as kind of an empty space, but actually the place where I start to feel good again. That's my experience. That there's a new number in the mix called positive 0.